not a believer that AI is going to take over everything. I think human intervention is still critically important.
What's your perspective on AI generated content?
I think I'm a big fan of being transparent. So I think if you said to a client, we would like to do this experiment, have a whole sort of set of disclosure at the beginning or the end that sort of describes what tools we're using, how we're using it, how much was a human sort of involved. As long as you're doing that, it's okay.
How important do you think in today's marketing landscape, this process of AI-driven vetting?
I've said this and I'll say it a lot more. You can never do enough vetting of influencers when you're going through this process.
Right. You're a proponent of even checking the deleted stuff also?
You can make a decision to say that doesn't matter, but it's always good to know all of the facts. If you don't embrace the idea of generative AI, you will fall behind significantly. If you're using it to generate things, triple check it, make sure it didn't hallucinate.
Hello everyone, this is Shubham Tiwari. I'm the Associate Director of Content Marketing and Socials at Phyllo, the universal solution for social media background checks and influencer vetting. I welcome you all to the season 3 of Impulse, Google's #1 rated podcast on influencer marketing. My guest today is Aaron Strout, former CMO at Real Chemistry. Aaron has deep expertise in integrated marketing, AI-driven healthcare strategies, and digital innovation. As the CMO of Real Chemistry, he shaped how data, AI, and storytelling intersect in healthcare and beyond. With a wealth of experience in leveraging paid, earned, owned, and shared media, he's here to share his insights on AI's role in marketing, influencer strategies, and the future of brand communications. Aaron, welcome to Impulse.
Thank you for having me here, Shubham. I'm excited to talk today.
Well, I'll ask you a question regarding a very recent phenomena, ChatGPT 4.0. We are seeing a lot of creative and wonderful images, by the way. What is your view on that? How do you see that shaping up the entire industry?
I mean, it's having a profound impact. And, I wish I had a crystal ball to know exactly what the balance was going to be between it having positive impact and not so positive impact. I think it gives people that might be creative but aren't, great at either photos or creating images, the ability to do things that before maybe they had to use a designer to do. That said, and I know we'll get into this, I am not a believer that AI is going to take over everything. I think human intervention is still critically important, particularly for quality assurance. And, we all know that, or if we don't, we'll talk about it, that generative AI can hallucinate and it can actually create some pretty embarrassing mistakes. And I think I'll give one quick example from the visual perspective and then let you continue on. If anyone's ever created an image and have words in the background, generative AI has this funny way of using words that don't exist. They look like they should be real words, but they're not. And so just thinking about, what are some of the tells if you're creating these things or if it's written or, copy, obviously it can make things up, because it doesn't like to be wrong or it doesn't like to disappoint and not have an answer.
Right. I mean, yeah, just today only, one of my colleagues took a screenshot of a, internal meeting and tried to make it into, that Ghibli art form, which is going viral on Twitter. And surprisingly, it didn't, get the spelling of just one of my colleagues' name. It didn't get it right, which was the easiest. So hallucination is a really funny part of it. What's a marketing buzzword or an AI buzzword you secretly can't stand?
It's funny. When I saw this question before, I thought long and hard of it, about it. And there's this saying, and I don't know if we can curse on the show or not, but there's something called BS. Okay, bullshit bingo. And, there are all these words that you talk about. And, I think it's when people talk in circles. And one of the things that we almost intentionally do sometimes is, we say these words and it's always funny when people don't exactly know what the words mean. And so, I think performance marketing is one that I like performance. And I know we're going to talk about data and analytics and how important it is, but I think a lot of times people talk about performance marketing and they're not really serious about it because I had my former manager who I like very much had a saying and a thesis, right? Which is if you're measuring something, make sure you can do something about it. Just measuring something and not taking any action on it can be a fool's errand. And so that's a long-winded answer, but there you go, performance marketing.
Great. Coming to Real Chemistry, it's at the forefront of data-driven marketing. How do you see, AI transforming influencer marketing or things at, Real Chemistry, particularly, let's say, expand it to healthcare also?
Yeah, I mean, I know we're going to talk a lot about influencer marketing, and that's a lot of what you do on your platform. I'll start by just saying it's having a profound impact, I think, in the ideation phase, as well as probably the most profound impact it's having on influencer marketing is the ability to do customize. I've been around in this industry. I've been doing digital since back in the mid 90s when the web was born. And we always talked about one-to-one marketing. And the problem was, is just because you know, like I might know who you are, that doesn't mean I can do that 100,000 times and have 100,000 different, taglines or pieces of copy or banners or pieces of creative. And so I think what's good is it does allow you to now start to one, ideate, two, customize. And then the third thing, and I don't want to steal too much thunder here, but in healthcare in particular, influencer marketing is huge. You can't sort of turn and see a ad for some sort of a pharmaceutical or a diagnostic or whatever without some sort of a face of an influencer there. But it's critically important for the authentic piece of it to know that this is someone that has been impacted by type 2 diabetes or has been impacted by, cirrhosis or whatever, whether it's them or a family member. And so being able to sort of scour the web and then make sure that they've got a pristine, background. We'll talk more about that. I know making sure that they've got the right followers in the right places. If I'm a healthcare company and my influencer is just on TikTok, that may or may not be the audience that I'm trying to hit, especially maybe if it's doctors, right? And so just making sure you're matching up all those things, and CRM, AI, generative AI, all play very nicely together.
Right. Another buzzword is AI agents, AI assistants, or co-pilots. Do you think in content creation, campaign execution, do you see them playing larger role, particularly when it comes to influencer marketing?
I do. It's interesting because a friend of mine, his name is Jason Stoddard, was showing me some things that they're playing around, and he brought up this term called agentic search, right? And I had not heard it before, but I knew what it was. And so for the audience listening in, think about this ability instead of Google where you go and you type in something and it just gives you the answers, so it's sort of a type in once and receive many. And obviously they've got, a little bit more specificity with the generative AI answers that they'll give up front. But the key is to be able to query and sort of have it do a series of actions while you're doing it, right? So think about an agent. If you said, hey, I want you to go out and find, these influences that meet a certain criteria, it does. And it comes back and said, look, I found 1,000 of them. If I had one additional criteria, which is they need to live, in Canada, or they need to be in the Northeast, or they have to be under the age of 25. Would you like me to put that filter on and then come back? And now it's like 250 people. And you can say, okay, that's great. I actually want to really lean into people that are not white men. And so, do another filtration on that to the degree you can. So having something that's smart and can really help you think through the process and maybe suggest intelligent recommendations that you wouldn't necessarily have thought of, I think can be incredibly powerful in this exercise.
Right. Coming back to the healthcare space, credibility and trust, it's everything. How does real chemistry ensure that influencers and brands align with each other's purpose and, standards?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it's probably the most important thing to get right because reputation is everything, right? And particularly in the life sciences space, they already get beat up somewhat unfairly. But there have been some bad actors, just like there have been, bad actors in the legal space and the finance space. And so really making sure you keep that clean is critically important. And I know that there's a group within Real Chemistry called Star Power, and they partner with brands to go out and secure talent for anything from a TikTok campaign to a major Super Bowl ad. And it is critically important to do your diligence and make sure there aren't any skeletons in the closet, to make sure that, for instance, it's not someone that's bashed your particular product or your general sort of field at some point in time, to make sure there aren't things that they do or say that maybe, if you're like a Johnson & Johnson and, you're marketing to parents, particularly mothers, that there hasn't been something that they've done from a humor perspective that has really pissed off mothers around the country, around the world. And so I think just making sure you do all of those things, you can't do enough homework to do that. And that is a place where I do think AI can help you, because you can say, I'm going to go and do my obvious search, but getting sort of one more set saying, look, I'm not sure, but this is a little bit of a red flag. Like, you should do a little bit of human intervention and dig into this and make sure that it's not something that's going to break the campaign down the road.
Right. And I understand this sensei approach, or scouting, let's say, in footballing terms, where you go out and seek more information, you do your recce. But when it comes to AI automation, of course, we are also into in social media background checks. We help with the vetting of influencers. So how important do you think in today's marketing landscape, of course, and this process of AI driven vetting And do you see it getting refined? And I believe you just said that you're not thinking that we can't do away with human intervention completely. But where do you see this going?
Yeah, I think it's only going to get more because again, you can only go, I mean, looking back in someone's Insta feed or their Twitter feed or X feed, I'll give an example, right? There was a colleague of ours and this person, I won't say whether it's a male or female, we noticed that they had been sort of commenting on and liking some particularly extreme political figures, right? And I won't say left or right, but it was something where given what their role was, and so this is internal, right? Not an
Yeah.
influencer, although one could argue that they were an influencer. So there's only so much you can do to monitor that. So think about the ability to sort of make sure that if you're bringing people in, whether those are employees or influencers or other partners, that to go, I've been on Twitter since I think 2006, right? Maybe 2007, I guess 2007. So to go through my, 50,000 tweets that I've done, I might not have done anything bad in the last 5 years, but like to be able to go back and what about my deleted tweets, right? Those are the ones that
Yeah.
you can never find. And so being able to do that and do that at scale and, be sensitive to the fact that it's like something that would work for Dunkin' Donuts may not work for, again, a Johnson Johnson because they need to, they're appealing to a different audience and they can't be necessarily as flippant or people won't sort of take them at that word if they're doing things like that. So it's really, that's why you have to do all of that vetting. I've said this and I'll say it a lot more. You can never do enough vetting of influencers when you're going through this process.
Right. So you're a proponent of doing like even checking the deleted stuff also. Do you believe that?
Well, I think, you can check it. Here's what I would always say is you can make a decision to say that doesn't matter, but it's always good to know all of the facts, right? So I'm a big believer is I'd rather know more than I don't. It's not the end of the world. And I think most of the time if someone's deleted it, then there's a reason why they deleted it, right? And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
might be an admission of guilt, but might also be something that says, you know what, I knew that was wrong. Maybe I'd had a few too many drinks or I was mad at that person or whatever it was. But I think, the more you can look around corners, let's couch it that way. The more looking around corners you can do, the better off you are.
Got it. Speaking of AI-driven analytics, they can offer deeper insights into performance. What tools or methodologies do you use to track influencer impact vis-a-vis business goals?
Yeah, so Real Chemistry uses a ton of different tools, a lot of which they've sort of either built in-house or customized, but a lot of stuff that's off the shelf, going back to the early days of listening. I think, we've worked with Phyllo before, but it's trying to sort of look at what are you trying to do? What are you trying to analyze? Who has the best path forward, right? Because we know that APIs, the protocols that allow tools to talk to the actual social media platforms, those change all the time. And so I know back in the day, we were doing some dashboards for clients and the APIs would break on a regular basis. So if you didn't have someone, full-time sort of looking at those things,
Yeah.
that was critical. And then the other is, for instance, you mentioned ChatGPT 4. That's one where, especially early days, that, if you're doing searches on that or you're doing prompts, it puts it into the cloud so everyone can see. And there are a lot of clients that aren't super comfortable with that, or maybe you have clients that aren't super comfortable with how you're using those things. So I think just, being able to take that best approach where you get tools that are readily available with expertise and they have people that have done this for a long time, then combining it with some of your own needs. One of the other tools, and this isn't a secret because we did a press release on it when I was at Real Chemistry, but Writer, that was one that we used in addition to a version of ChatGPT as well as some other things that got put together. But it's really just thinking about what are you trying to accomplish? What data do you have? Are you treating that data, with the right privacy, respect, and transparency, and making sure, again, especially in healthcare, that you're doing everything that the clients would, want to know that you're doing. And so, again, that's a long-winded answer, but it's obviously a complicated issue.
Yeah, speaking of data privacy, which you just mentioned, how do you see privacy regulations tightening up? Because we are seeing tremendous, achievements through, like ChatGPT 4, as you see. Do you see anything, any space, gray areas which are going to be shrunk, or how do you see it?
Well, how long do we have here? I think if you asked me this question a year ago, I'd give you a different answer than I would give you today. And I have a friend named Ann Hanley who's been at Marketing Profs forever and has written a number of books. and zillions of articles. And she was complaining about the fact that Meta had gone out recently and basically was training one of its new platforms on, I think it was like 71 million books and articles and things like that.
Wow.
And there was no acknowledgement of it. There was no, request for permission. And so I feel like right now we're at a place, given the current administration, and I'm not making this political, that there's sort of less oversight versus more. And there's not really a lot of ways that we can sort of, there are very few repercussions in terms of what are being done. And if you just watch the presidential inauguration, you had, I think, 4 or 5 of the largest tech companies in the world sitting, surrounding him in a
Right
very
behind him.
small area,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
that tells you everything that you need in terms of there's going to be less versus more, which I don't think is necessarily a good thing. Now, that said, I am also a believer that too much regulation can stunt the growth of things. And, to let AI fully run its course, particularly in the marketing space, that there should be a lot of experiments. Now, you need to have controlled experiments so they don't run amok. Just like if you're developing a new drug or a new therapy, then you want to make sure that you're doing the right thing so you don't kill everyone in the building, by mixing 2 gases or substances together. So, it is an interesting question. It is one that I think, sadly, we're going to get less regulation and not necessarily in a good way.
Yeah, because seeing all that Ghibli, art form all over my Twitter today, I mean, I had mixed feelings because I know it's not generated by Hayao Miyazaki. It's something, AI. So how do we look at our, artists, for example, or marketers, let's say, in this context? So it's really interesting. Speaking now of content, in an era of short form content and hyper personalization, how is real chemistry leveraging AI to create tailored content, if at all, for different audience segments?
Yeah, I won't go too much into it because I'm not as close day to day in terms of how they're doing that. I can, say that one of the things that I always proposed and we sort of did when we were marketing to our clients versus
Yep.
helping our clients with their marketing is you like to create sort of a hero piece of content, whether that's a white paper, an ebook, whether it's a webinar, a podcast, it's maybe a 2,000 word article. It's thinking about how can you then take that and break that down into bite-sized pieces, because we know that obviously on TikTok and on, Reels on Instagram, the 15 seconds to 30 seconds plays a lot better than something that's an hour long, right? Whereas YouTube, people might tune in to watch something for an hour. Spotify, even LinkedIn now is experimenting with longer form vertical video. And so I think to bring this home, we talked about CRM and personalization. One, thinking about what is the optimal sort of version of that. And that's another thing. I think anyone that's, done a reel recently on Instagram, you can now pick a song and it will actually pick the song and sort of make a recommendation of like the 15 or 20 or 30 seconds of that song that matches what you're trying to go for. So finding like what length, maybe what platform should you be using, and then what are the interests of the people that you're targeting. So I remember many moons ago, we were working with Red Bull, and this is before we had so many fancy analytical tools, and the APIs for Facebook were still rudimentary. And one of the guys who was our head data science guy, they went in and were able to look through all 30 million users or followers of Red Bull's Facebook page. And based on that, they were able to tell, to the best of their ability, because some names are a little bit more androgynous, but they were able to tell whether males or females were liking the images or the content that was there. And they got down to the details of like, is it a far away shot? Is it a close-up shot? Is it an action shot? Is it a product shot? And so if you think about that on steroids now, 10 years later, some of the things you can do to identify, is your audience truly engaging with it? And maybe not just liking it, but leaving a comment or sharing it. You can sort of evoke a number of new responses to things that maybe you never were able to do before.
Right. Now, moving to, authenticity of the content. What's your perspective on AI generated content? Should brands really embrace it, or is there a risk of losing authenticity?
So it definitely is, you run the risk. I think I'm a big fan of like being transparent. So I think if you said to a client, we would like to do this experiment. We are going to be clear that we are using generative AI. We can even, have a whole sort of set of disclosure at the beginning or the end that sort of describes what tools we're using, how we're using it, how much was a human sort of involved. Because as long as you're doing that, it's okay. And again, I think I touched on this up front. I know the creative teams, because there are many of them at Real Chemistry, a lot of what they were using generative AI was really for the ideation, like, this is what I'm trying to accomplish. Give me 6 ideas that I can then take and run with, versus like, go create the image or go create the copy and then I'm just going to publish it, right? Because again, No client wants that. They do want you to be able to do things faster, more efficiently, and maybe, instead of going in and giving them 2 options, you can give them 6 options because generative AI helped you with that. But back to your question of authenticity, being transparent with the client, being transparent with the end audience, being transparent even internally. How did you use this? What did you use it for? Did you have the licenses if you're using other people's, IP protected content? And if not, then, we need to reach out to them and talk to them if, that's something that we do think we're going to use. So anyway, I am a big fan of making sure you're authentic, transparent, making sure that you're very clear with your rules of engagement and you've, triple checked all the boxes.
Really like that phrase, rules of engagement. If you had to make one bold prediction about AI's role in influencer marketing or marketing in, let's say, in general, what would it be?
I love this question, and it's actually a tricky one because I think you initially asked me, think about it in 2030, right? Which is 5 years off.
Yes,
Some
yes.
people's minds, maybe that's not far away. In my mind, it's like that's eons away. And just think about how fast this is moving right now. Generative AI is sort of moving at anyone that's familiar with Moore's Law. Moore's Law was the rule of microchips, right? That they're sort of doubling in speed and shrinking in size on a hockey stick. And so I think one of the things that we are going to see, and one of my colleagues actually did this, he wrote a book recently, or former colleagues, he basically downloaded his brain into, an AI agent. And so what his goal was I want to put the book out, and then I want people to be able to come in and ask me any question about the book, and it will answer the questions just like I would answer it. So we all know that if you've got someone like Serena Williams or Charles Barkley or, Joel Bevel, that you can't necessarily, they don't have time to answer everyone's questions. They don't have the time to come in and give you a very specific answer. So what if you were able to take one of those people and you were able to essentially download how they thought, how they answered, all of the things that they'd ever wrote or said in public, and allowed them, and obviously they would want to have, safety checks on that. But thinking about the ability to interact with someone that is very clear that it is a, AI version of them, it's not them. I think that gives you a tremendous amount of scale and a tremendous amount of ability to interact and ask interesting questions. And I know another friend actually that's doing a similar project. And one of the things that they use as an experiment is you could go in and ask any former president of the United States a question. And you could actually ask, 5 of them at a time. And so how would George Washington answer it? How would Jimmy Carter answer it? How would Barack Obama answer it? It's actually quite fascinating if you think about it, because yes, you can sort of fake their tone. You can fake, sort of the time of the era, but really thinking about like what were their views on foreign policy or domestic policy or
Yep.
more regulation, less regulation. So anyway.
Yeah, a lot of exciting things are happening. It reminds me of character.ai, where you can create a character of your own and you can talk to them. I created this avatar of a celebrated filmmaker of India, Satyajit Ray, and a lot of people are talking to it now. So it's really fascinating. Aaron, couple of rituals that we make our guests go through at the end of the interview. First one, you have to give us a book recommendation. I think you talked about a couple of books. If you'd like to name them or give it a something other name. Yeah.
I have one that I'm reading right now that I'm going to go ahead and I just need to look it up. So give me 1 second. It's by a gentleman that I just met recently at South by Southwest named Moo Tomlinson. And the book is called Less Than 1%. How Disruptors Defy the Odds. And so I'm about 3/4 of the way through. And if anyone ever read the book, Freakonomics, it's not exactly similar to that, but it uncovers these interesting patterns in sort of our history and our behavior and why it is that you can't always take things sort of at their face value. So his full name is Dr. Imamu Tomlinson, but he goes by Moo Tomlinson and then less than 1%.
Wonderful. Last one. Would you like to nominate anyone for our show?
Someone that I think I would definitely nominate would be a gentleman named Chuck Heeman. Chuck and I worked together for a long time at Real Chemistry. He is now at Minds and Assembly. He's their chief integration officer. And he's someone that has thought a tremendous amount about all of these things. And I'd love to have someone that's, not another white male like myself. And so I guess Ann Hanley would be another one that, is not female. And I've recommended Moo, who is a black gentleman, lovely gentleman. But I think, Chuck or Ann Hanley would be two lovely people to have on the show in the future.
Thank you so much. We would definitely, try to get them on the show. Aaron, thank you so much for your time. If there is anything that you'd like to add, and if I didn't ask you, now's the time. If you'd like to add anything.
No, I think we touched on this, but I'm going to say it one more time because, again, I know people are nervous that generative AI is going to take their jobs away. It's no different than what we've seen through history. And a friend of mine made a recommendation that Photoshop, in some ways, was this, right? Photoshop didn't stop people from being creative, but it gave them a whole nother level set of tools that made them better and allowed them to move faster. And actually, once you create a file, instead of having drawn something by hand, if there's a mistake in it or something, you don't have to redo the entire thing. You can basically just take the layer off and add another layer. So I think think about how you can use it. So that's the one place that if you don't embrace the idea of generative AI, you will fall behind significantly. And two, there can't be enough human oversight in terms of if you're using it to generate things, triple check it, make sure it didn't hallucinate, make sure if you can that there are annotations so you can go back, if it's transcribing a meeting or it's going out and, leveraging other resources, make sure that it's doing its heavy lifting there, because you can get embarrassed very quickly if you don't sort of oversee that. And again, we talked about clients. Clients are very skeptical still of this doing it, other than, they want you to do things faster, cheaper, but they do not want the quality to suffer, and they do not want to get caught, with their caught red-handed, doing something that they weren't aware of or they wouldn't necessarily approve of.
Wonderful. Aaron, thank you for being a pioneer of the industry for the last 30 or 40 years and giving us a reassurance or a message that, generative AI is the future. We should embrace it, not be fearful of it. And we look up to your work. And thank you once again. And,
thank you, Shubham.
Thank you to everyone for watching the show. If you'd like to add a comment, please leave in the comment box. Follow Aaron on LinkedIn, as I do. And I'll see you in the next episode. Thank you so much.
Impulse, the influencer marketing podcast, is brought to you by Phyllo. Phyllo is the easiest way to get access to authenticated creator data from hundreds of different platforms. To know more about Phyllo, visit getphyllo.com. That's get, PHYLLO.com. Also, make sure to search for Influencer Marketing Podcast in Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube Podcasts. And don't forget to click subscribe so you don't miss out on any future episodes. On behalf of the team here at Phyllo, thank you so much for listening.